All right, so you were saying about the restaurant.
So the first restaurant I remember going to, because we were so poor, my parents never went to a restaurant, was Sibley Gardens in Trenton. And the priest said, anything you want on the menu, you boys can order. Because, priests got paid, so much a month for their service. It wasn't for,
Yeah.
you're a priest and your organization, but the organization still paid you every month. You got a check, he told me. So I was just flabbergasted to being a real nice, and because you've been 70 gardens with your family, and it was always nice, first class, Tiffany lights, and I was just overwhelmed because I'd never been in a place like that, And I remember that's the first time I ever ate out.
You remember what you ate?
No,
No.
I don't know. I think it was chicken, some kind of a chicken. I don't recall for sure. But one of my later on memories when I was like a junior in high school, back in when was it, 51, 52, pizza just came to the United States. And the only place in the whole, and we were considered growing up downriver, Wyandotte was downriver, I was part of Wyandotte. And there's a place in Lincoln Park. In fact, your mom and I were just talking about old memories the other day, called Clementi's. It was a bar restaurant, and they served nothing but Italian food. Well, one of the guys that I hung around with found out that this dish called pizza came into town, and why don't we go over and try it? Back then I was already had to be 16 because I was driving back then.
Was that the driving age back then, or was it?
Yeah, 16 and up you could drive. So I remember my dad had bought this older truck that I could use, for my brother and I. And I remember we all went over to this Clementi's in Lincoln Park. It was on 4th Street. I think it's still there. And the boys I was with ordered these big round pizzas. And I never saw that before in my life, never heard of it. And what do I order? A hamburger. I said, I'm not eating that. I'm like a dumbass. I'm having a hamburger, boys. So I eat my hamburger, and they give you a little handful of chips back then and pop. And these guys finished their Clementi's pizza, and there was a couple pieces left over. And one of my buddies, of course, my nickname back there was Farm because I lived on the farms. Hey, farmer, why don't you try one of those? Because we're not going to take it back. I said, man, I don't know about that. He said, hey, just try it. You never had it before. I said, see, you may like it. I said, well, it don't look that good to me. You know what I'm talking about, how you see the sauce on it and the cheese.
Grease,
And,
like that.
and the thin crust. Damn, I ate that thing. I said, hey, that isn't too bad. So that was my first introduction to pizza, probably 1952 or 3, probably 2. Anyway, we never went to restaurants. Now, my wife, my beloved wife, Pat, her parents only had the one child, Pat, because her mother had female troubles way back then when she was young, giving birth. And they never had another baby. Well, they had a couple bucks. And she told me they went out once in a while, not the siblings. That was more of a upper class, lawyers, doctors, priests, people with money. But she would go to like a lesser restaurant. There was a couple just starting then, back in the early 50s. Because she told me, "Do you ever go out to eat?" We got talking, She said, yeah, once in a while. She said there was a place there in Riverview that had real cheap, all-you-can-eat family-style chicken dinners. And her and mom and dad would go there once in a while on a Sunday. They had a special Sunday. And but my parents never did that. I don't remember eating out with my mother and dad. Other if it was a wedding or, after a funeral, they'd have, food, we'd go to one of those. But a restaurant, no, we never went. Damn.
It's all this wind.
But anyway, going back where I'm at now. Anyway,
like high. I want to know about like junior high school. Like, how was life in junior high school and high school?
like I said, I was quiet. I don't remember much.
Classes.
I remember fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade was nothing special. Everybody was afraid of the nuns. Like Grandma used to tell nun stories.
Yeah.
Now we should have got on tape.
I know.
So she was a classic for telling them. Even all my neighbors still remember her about that. They loved to hear her stories. And I never thought to get that on tape. Damn it. But anyway, like I say, I was quiet. I just stuck with some of the guys. Went in high school. I never played sports in the ninth grade. Starting the 10th grade, September, a couple of my buddies got on a football team. Hey, Farm, why don't you play football? I said, football? Never thought of playing sports when I grew up. My dad never encouraged that.
Really, nothing like that.
No, not my family. He says, yeah. He says, well, we need a couple of guys. The coach said, they're starting a football team up in Mount Carmel. And, why don't you come on and try it? Jesus, I don't know how I said yes. So eventually, I got onto the football team. And I played football for 3 years. I was good at it. I was a center. Yeah, I liked it. And I was a center. What they call a single wing backfield from my sophomore, junior, senior year. In fact, in the senior year, they used to have we were like a Class C team. That schools rated for student population by grades. And Mount Carmel being a small school, even though it was Catholic, we were classified as a C school. Well, at the end of the football, these different coaches and writers would nominate guys that they thought, were a little bit above average. And I finally got nominated for first string center last year.
Cool.
That was kind of neat to see, see my name in the paper.
Did your parents say anything about that?
Not a lot. My dad was, kind of funny. He didn't say much. Never. He wouldn't give you, pat on the back much. No, I just played, and I'd come home late for supper because, it was always after school. Right after school, we had to go from high school. We had to walk through about five city blocks to the park. It was called Pulaski Park. And they had a big field there where we trained, with a coach. Young guys from college graduated, in that degree, education, coaching, and told us how. I had no idea how to play football. He gave us all the, basics and how to center a football because he picked me for center. Me and this other kid, and I made first team. And I remember those years.
Did your brother play?
He played, but he had a bad temper. The coach that coached me, he moved up to a bigger school, more money. He went to Dearborn something. It's still there. I don't think it's Dearborn Lottery, but I know if I heard it. But he got moved up, and we hated the same league because he was real nice to us, and he'd chew your butt, but the bottom line is always, praising you. Hey, you did good today. Just, remember what I told you. That's all. Stuff like that. Then, when I was graduating, my brother took up. Well, he was a year behind me. He played football the last 2 years. He didn't play the first 2 years. He played the last 2 years. Well, the year I left school and he went back to school and played football, him and the coach got in a big argument. He didn't want to hear just had an attitude, Ed Olander. And you couldn't tell him nothing. Next thing you know, he'd come home. And I remember I was home because I was already out of school working. My first job was in an office, typing and checking orders and that. And
so you were like 18 or 19. He was.
I was 19 when I graduated. Yeah. I was 18 in June when I graduated. August I was 19, and I was working. I had no trouble finding a job. And when I remember I come home, and this little truck I used to drive, my dad gave it to him so he could go to school and finish. In the meantime, I bought myself my own car. It was a 1949 Ford. So I had, felt pretty good. I was my own. I had a car. I had a couple bucks in my pocket, And I remember coming home, from work. So I had to work 9 to 5, and I got home about 5:30 or so because I worked. My first job was over by off of 4th Street, that I-75, that real long big bridge. I don't know if you remember that or not. Probably don't. But anyway, I was sitting eating dinner, and Ed was there too. And I didn't question my brother. Of course, I didn't want to get poked. My dad come home from work in days. He looked at the table, did a double take. He said to Ed, he said, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at practice." Ed said, "Dad, I quit." He blew up because he liked us playing sports,
Oh, he didn't encourage it, but he liked you.
He liked it once we started. He liked coming to the games if he was off, and yelling Olander. Didn't say Burns, always Olander. I remember that. Because we played, from school year, we played like 9 games, It was every, when was it? Every Sunday, was it? Yeah, every Sunday we had a football game. And if he was off, he would come to Wyandotte. All our games were in Wyandotte. And he said, "I quit." The old man, "You quit? What's wrong?" Really loud. He said, that, my brother already had started getting an attitude. He said, "Well, that coach and I just didn't agree on what was going on." And he said, "Ed, he's the coach. You're supposed to listen to him." Well, he said, "I didn't want to take the coach it." So Ed got pissed because got questioned, Threw his chair against the table, I remember, and he walked off into the bedroom. And I never questioned him about it. That was his decision.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about my brother Ed, the day he graduated in June of 54, he signed up for the Air Force. So I never got to know him after that. Because he spent 4 years in the Air Force. I was working in the meantime, and I started dating my wife. Back then, we dated for a while, then we broke up. I didn't see her for over a year. But I always had feelings for her because I dated a couple other girls, and we'd go out, to the drive-in or to the park or something, I don't know. My mind would always go back to that. And, then I knew there was something there, that I really started to care for.
Yeah, how was when
That's how it goes.
Yeah, people date dates where you went to the park, you went to
we went to the
what
park.
was dating like back then?
Well, it was, the biggest thing back then, there was no TV. We started dating back then. There was radio, records, but no TV. And one of our first big dates is when we actually got back together. Because our first date, we went to the A&W in Wyandotte, thinking, or not thinking, I didn't know she didn't like root beer. I love root beer. She drank it to please me. She told me later on, but she didn't enjoy it. That was our first formal date when I asked her out. And we'd do nothing. We just went over there. And I don't know if we had some fries and a root beer and, went around town and see what was going on. Because the big thing is by the river, everybody goes by the water. We rode around and I took her back home, said, thanks a lot. And hope to see you again, So it's
how did you guys communicate? Call? How did you call?
Yeah, that's how you communicated. Telephone. She gave me her phone number. She never called me for years. It's beyond a girl to call a guy back then. That's how it was. So I call her up now and then, say, "How you doing?" Blah, blah. Or, her mother would say, "Pat's not home. Just tell her Bernie called, Okay. Stuff like that. And then, like I say, Uh, she was dating some guys, and I dated a few girls. And then we had I think it was a wedding that we met again. I haven't seen her.
At a wedding?
Quite a while. Yeah, we had.
Coincidentally.
Coincidentally, the friend that I knew, evidently, the guy, girl he was marrying, it was a friend of Pat's circle. And she was there. And I looked, I says, hey, I know you. She looked, gave me a smile. I says, hi, Vern. I said, hi, Pat. How you doing? Pretty good. What's going on? Oh, nothing much. You going steady? She said, no. I said, I'm not either. And, just small talk about, who you're here with, stuff like that. Eventually I asked her, I said, hey, what are you doing next Saturday? You want to go to the movies? And she said, yeah, I'd like that. And that's what started it. I picked her up, and her parents are very nice.
Yeah, what do you remember about, were you
They were
nervous
just nice.
when you were...
I was nervous, yeah. They had a real nice house. I had come from old farmhouse, and they had a real nice house in the city.
You remember where at, like inside of Wyandotte?
Yeah, I can take you right there now. I still remember her house. I mean, we dated for almost 2 years. And, yeah, I think it was like 1253 12th Street she lived on. And actually, the first time I met her, I was a senior in school, and she was a sophomore, and I met her in the hallway. And I had the hots for this other girl, but it didn't work out, so I got over that. And I saw her, and I said, my buddy said, hey, bro, she's kind of cute. I says, yeah. I says, I wonder who she is. He said, I'll find out for you. Well, he was more of a bullshitter, than I was. I told you I was a little quiet. He asked one of the, because he grew up in Wyandotte, so he knew a lot of Wyandotte people. I did. I didn't hang out in Wyandotte other than a date or football or basketball game. He said, yeah, her name is Pat Missouri. I said, well, geez, I wonder if, I went to introduce myself. I said, hey, how you doing? We were in the hallway, and she had a bunch of books. And I said, I just wondered if you do anything after school. I said, I'd like to walk you home. Would you mind? She said, oh, no. That was the first time I really got to talk to her and know her. I walked 2 miles for that girl. It was a mile from the school to her house. And I had to leave my truck back there because I was ashamed to put her in the truck.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. I just felt bad, just poor class.
Truck? Oh, like a truck was a...
It was like a, back then they called them a stake truck. They make them now, but very little. Well, it was like a flat bottom truck, a little bit bigger than a pickup. Just 3 people. You could ride 3 people in front. That's it. And the sideboard were wood. You could take the wood, the sides in or out. No top. There was a back. When I drove it, I didn't have the sides. I just had the flatbed. And I was just embarrassed. I don't know.
Did other kids have other different cars?
Yeah, they had better cars than I did. There was a couple of, poor people like me with a junker. And it really wasn't a junker. I mean, it needed a paint job. The Christ, it's probably 15 years old when I got it. It ran, and that's all I care.
Yeah.
So I walked her all the way home to her house and, carried her books. Jesus.
Hey, we can pause it. Yeah, little chipmunks?
Yeah, usually I see them over there by the wood pile or the bird seed. I don't see them today.
Okay, so we gotta start back at...
Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So start with
Who's
so you guys... I want to hear more about like your house, like...
Oh, the house
the
was...
coal and shoveling coal.
Well,
in the
summer, hot summers. August was always bad at our house.
Yeah, what did you get?
And
fans?
there was no air conditioning back then. Nobody had air conditioning. And You slept on the floor with a pillow and a blanket and or sheet, probably not a blanket, sheet, and with a big 18, 20-inch fan running, and that's it, to cool off. And it was terrible. You lay there trying to sleep. It was so hot. Finally, towards morning, who knows, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, you finally dozed off and got some sleep. But that's just how it was. For a long time, I remember that. And like I say, in the winter, we burned coal for years.
Did you have to do that when you were? Do you remember shoveling it when you were?
As
young?
I got a little bit older, yeah, I was the oldest, of the two. 2 years older than my brother Ed. So usually it was up to me to go down there, and Mom said, hey, Bernie, go throw a couple of shovels in. And one thing about, like I say, the coal, there was always like an ember, it didn't have a big flame like wood. So there was always hot coal. So, you threw a couple, I'd say 2, 3, 4 shovelfuls. And that would go for several hours, heat that house.
Did your mom ever do that?
Yeah, she did sometimes, but, it was not her, favorite thing to do that. I know she did a couple times there when, we weren't feeling good or tired or sick or whatever. But,
and they delivered it every week. Cold. Or did you have to pick it up?
no, they would deliver it, but it was like, once every 6 weeks, you get a 5 ton of coal.
5 tons?
Tons.
Do you
That's
remember,
what I
was
said.
it expensive?
No, it was cheap, my dad told me. I don't know where, I never thought of any money until
Yeah.
I got a teenager, but it was the cheapest thing to burn was coal. Coal was cheap then, coming out of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, up in those mountains. They had a lot of coal.
So it took up a huge chunk of the basement?
Yeah. Figure, 4 corners, it took one whole corner. It was probably, like I say, 12 feet or maybe 10 feet out, 12 feet across, or just, vice versa, but it was a big cement block wall, there in front, just had enough width, I'd say probably 3 feet wide that you could go in there, pick up a shovel and turn around, take about 4 steps and throw it into the big monster that kept us warm.
Yeah.
But it was terrible because you couldn't regulate it. And as I got older and realized my poor mother put up with that shit, But I never heard her complain. So
Yeah. Did you remember your parents about the heat, about the cold, about the coal? Like did they realize that it was?
well, everybody was doing it. All her brothers she had one sister, Lillian. She was a lot younger than her, probably 12, 14 years younger. But all of those, once they got their own house, everybody had a wood-burning furnace.
Wood burning?
I'm sorry. Coal burning. Because I remember that in, not so much in the Olander's house, but in Savula's house, I remember, around the corner there was a furnace and, coal bin, B-I-N, bin, coal bin. Everybody had one. And then little by little, they got oil. Fuel oil was developed. And
what is
people
that?
It's a derivative of oil. It's called fuel oil. They still have it. It's not real popular. Most people don't need it, except out in the country, It's a real fine oil. It doesn't burst into flame like gasoline. It's got a low burn to it. Somebody invented that, and that was big then. So people were converting their furnaces, which was like half the cost from coal to fuel oil. And in fuel oil, you'd have like outside. It wasn't inside. It was stored outside your house in a real big, like a 55-gallon drum. A guy would come, fill it up, and it was cheaper than coal. And that's how
your family never got that?
we never got into that. I don't remember my dad having fuel oil. No, he had that wood burner for years. I was a kid. Then as I got older, my mother got older. She didn't want to deal with it anymore. So they had electric heat. They had an electrician come in from Detroit Edison and wired the house up with radiators. Low radiators.
And when was that?
Electric heat.
When?
Probably I graduated 53. Probably 1950.
Oh, so you didn't need to get electric heat until you were like in high school.
Yeah, exactly. We had to burn wood,
Coal.
burn coal.
You ever remembered smelling like anything? Like
No, because coal, surprisingly, was cleaner smell than the fuel oil. I mean, if you got fuel oil on your clothing, and some of the kids in school
smelled like
would
it?
come in. Oh yeah, I could tell immediately. I come from a coal burning house. I could smell his clothing. That fuel oil had a.
You remember that as a young kid.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember that. Especially that one kid. He'd come in and goddamn, I don't know what he was doing. What the fuel oil, but he always stunk in fuel oil. It had a distinct smell, and it was nothing like coal. Coal did not smell. It burned clean. Had some smoke, but it wasn't strong like wood or fuel oil.
Mm-hmm.
Fuel oil burned clean too, but there was a smell to it when it was raw. And if you happen to get on your shoes or pants, like a couple of those kids, there wasn't many. I'd say there's maybe 2 or 3 that I remember in high school, like the 9th grade, would come in and start smelling. What the hell is that? And you realize, because I didn't have fuel oil, and that's what it was. Fuel oil spilled on their shoes. So what they were doing with it or how they did it, who knows?
Yeah.
We never got to talking about it, but you just ignored it. That's all.
So in your house, there was no running water. You had to get.
No running water. No.
So talk about.
We didn't get running water till I was a teenager. They finally come through. The city came through as things started developing in our area there, off of Eureka and Taylor Township. They finally got running water, and they ran a line probably 80 feet from the main line into my mom's house. Finally, we had flush toilets, flush showers. We could do that, finally, after all those years of toughing it out.
Just talk
Four of
about
us.
that too, getting the jugs of water
Oh, yeah.
once a week.
My dad used to haul it once a week. A lot of times Ed and I go with him, for a ride, get out of the house. And they'd carry these big milk cans. There are a lot of old movies, especially, for a movie like in Vermont or, they were just milk cans. They were stainless steel.
What if you ran out of, you fill those up?
Well, we got low. My mother would get on his ass and say, hey, we need some fresh water here. It's already 5 to 6 days and we're just about out, Because back then, those refrigerators, there was no ice cubes when I was growing up. All you had, if you want an ice cube, I remember this distinctly, and you'd have to buy either a 25 square block of frozen ice or 50 pound and put it in your refrigerator.
50 pounds.
50 pounds. My dad would have to lift that thing here like a prong with a handle, and as you put the prong up, the handles would dig into the ice. You would pick that up and slide it in there. Well, then below that you had a pan, because that thing melted after a while. Didn't last forever.
Yeah.
Maybe 3, 4, 5 days you got ice. And the only way to get a cold drink is take an ice pick. And I still have one at my house in my tool drawer from when I was a kid.
You the same one?
Yep, it's an ice pick. Real sharp, thin. Well, you chopped off a chunk of ice. It was like heaven, ice cold.
No wonder you love ice.
Yeah, well, your grandmother loved ice, and of course she was brought up in a city where I wasn't. But, for a while she had the same thing when she was a kid, because she was, 3 years younger than me. And she remembers, her dad hauling 25 pounds of ice, to keep milk, and it wasn't cold like they are now.
Right.
I set my refrigerator on 37 and shit, it's ice, everything's nice. Back then, ice freezes at 32, so you figure by the time they put it in there with all the insulation and everything, it probably got to maybe 40, I'm guessing. And, it'd melt. It was cold for a while.
The water?
There was a pan underneath.
And you just used that?
And my dad had to drain that and dump it out, or my mother would. She could handle that. She'd drain that, just had the ice, but that's how it was for years. Come and think of it, I almost forgot that.
Yeah.
Damn.
You didn't keep anything. So what was kept in the refrigerator? Like what?
Well, butter. I remember butter, sour cream, because we had sour cream with cucumbers when I was a kid. Lunch meat was big back then. Everybody had bologna or salami sandwiches or, cheese. Cheese was a big thing back then. We didn't have a lot of cheese because it was expensive. Meat was cheaper.
Really, meat was cheaper than cheese?
Yeah. Back when I was a kid, yep. They had some pop. We didn't have a lot of pop back then, like we do now.
Yeah,
There was no diet. It was regular sugar pop. Coca-Cola was Coke. Pepsi was Pepsi. Then they had Orange Crush Orange, which I used to like.
When you were a kid, you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was no diet stuff. It was straight. And we never had a lot of that because I had no, money for anything to buy extra till I was older. Then I started going to the golf course because the school of boys used to golf, not golf, but caddy at that golf club on Groseal. Then my Uncle Vic got me to caddy over there. And
How old were you when?
Probably I was 12 years old, 13 when I started caddying. They teach you, like a little class, what to do. Never have your shadow block the hole. Always be polite. Hand the club to the your client, whatever. So I started making a few bucks there.
Did your parents, when you were younger, did your parents make you work a lot like that? Like around the house, around?
No, not too much there, but, as I got older, like maybe 14, 15, my dad was on my back about driving a tractor, and Gus had no patience. My wife thought I had no patience. My dad was a nice guy, loved to party, good dancer. And but he had no patience, He'd say one thing, now I want you to drive this tractor, and the tractor had, two small tires here, probably about that far apart, and two big ones, and I had to, drive it real slow in first gear, and he would hold on to what the hell did they call it back then? But it was like a blade shaped like this, and as the tractor would pull that blade in the dirt would,
Like tills it?
Like tilled it. It would open up, And I remember, once in a while I'd screw up, and I was always so nervous with him because he was always, he was the most patient guy,
Your parents, when they would get mad at you, they hit you?
My mother was nice. No, he wouldn't. He'd just yell, My mother had more patience than my dad. My dad was short fuse. And I used to hate that job. We had to go out in the garden, because they had a big garden. They would make food enough for 4 people. And then everybody would come over once in a while, pick weeds. And the dry spell in July, they'd have, carry that water on a wagon. It was just a tough life back then.
What'd you grow? What'd you grow?
They grow primarily tomatoes, because everybody can.
Well, good.
Good. Everybody can tomatoes. And one of the things I remember about my mother, which I loved, that nobody can duplicate. I wish, you always wish when they're gone. I wish she would have told me the recipe or whatever. But she used to make a chili sauce out of this world. And I used to love it ice cold on smoked kielbasa. We'd have smoked kielbasa about twice a month. at home. My dad loved it, and I would put, now I love it with mustard and onion, but back then, all I wanted was
like a tomato sauce.
No, it was like a chili sauce, tomato sauce, and she used to make it in like half quarts. And I don't know what her recipe was, but man, that was delicious. She had like diced pepper in it, naturally tomatoes, because that was the basic unit. And she had something else in there, 2 or 3 vegetables. Oh, diced onion, real fine diced onion, which gives it a flavor. But it was just so damn good. I used to love it.
Did she make jars?
She used to make jars, yeah.
And save it for...
Yeah, because when they had to harvest, like now, well, it wouldn't be now, it would be August. End of August, when all the tomatoes ripen and everything, they would all pick them up, and they'd have like 3 days. My dad would drive to the city, drop my mother off at Spula's, and for 3 days they did nothing but can. Then they split it,
Really, it was a whole family.
Because back then, family stuck together close, and they would can like whole tomatoes for the winter, but they bought very little. That's one way they saved their money, because to can something was like 19 cents. My mother used to tell me, but to buy one, it was 29 cents. They had them. There was Del Monte was big back then, and a couple other, Heinz was big. But I remember that I used to say, "Ma, how come we can't buy some stuff?" And then she'd tell me, "Vern, this here, I make it for 19 cents, but if I have to go to the store, I got to pay anywhere from 27 to 30 cents. So little by little, we saved that extra money, and that's how they had their savings.
What do you remember eating over the winter? So you guys had to...
Winter, we had a lot of soups. I remember coming out of, Polish people, and we had a lot of soup. One of my favorite soups my grandmother used to make, Cebula was a better cook than the Olander. But she would make like a mushroom soup. Again, all natural. You go out in the woods. My grandpa used to call them pink bottoms rather. There was a mushroom that came out, I can't remember if it was spring or fall.
You used to pick them?
Yeah, with my grandpa, me and my brother. They were about that tall. They were a small round mushroom, but then when you look underneath the cap, they're like real light pink. And they were safe to eat. My grandpa told me, don't eat.
Got a bug on your little shirt.
You dog. It was. He said, don't eat nothing but these.
And they used to make soup out of them, you said?
And they were delicious. She'd make some kind of a, with cream and, the old people didn't know how to cook. They didn't go to restaurants. Seldom. Rich people did. Restaurants back in the 40s were just coming in.
Do you ever remember going to restaurants when you were young?
I never went to, my first restaurant, to be honest, that I remember is when I played basketball for Mount Carmel, and we made some kind of a playoffs. And the priest, his name was Ladislaus from Poland, Warsaw. Ladislaus, Krych, K-R-Y-C-H. How that's Polish, I never knew. Never asked him. I'd probably get whacked. But anyway, that's the first time I ever went out to a fancy restaurant. And guess where it was? In Trenton, where Grandpa Crittens used to take you guys. That Sibley Gardens, when they first opened up, this priest took us for a treat. And we could have...
It's out?
Yeah,